Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about from couch potato to manifesto with John. Oh my goodness, this is such a great topic, especially for those individuals who are just trying to figure out what manifestation can really do to you. Well, I have John here all the way from Vancouver to give me his insight. So, thank you so much, John, for being on my show. But let's just dive right into it. What made you go into from a couch potato to a manifester? Like, what does that mean to you?
Okay. Thank you so much, Misty. Well, I have a tendency to filibuster. You can cut me off at any point. I'm 59 and I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And I grew up in the 1970s and I was a huge comic book nerd. And it was a different time. I felt kind of stigmatized. I kind of felt a little bit marginalized from quote unquote mainstream society because as a Canadian, if you're a boy and you don't like hockey, you're considered a total weirdo. I'm surprised I wasn't burned at the stake. My spirit did not come into this body with any sort of interest in sports whatsoever. I like comic books and sci-fi and Star Trek and all that kind of stuff. So when I was a boy, I wanted to be a comic book artist. And then when I graduated high school in 1983, I tried acting for a couple of years. You look quite young, but there was a Western from the 1960s called The Big Valley. And one of the stars of that show, Peter Breck, he came to Vancouver and he started an acting school called the Breck Academy. And this was in the mid 1980s. And the film and TV industry was really booming in Vancouver at this point. So I tried acting for a couple of years. That was an amazing experience for me. I got to meet Gene Hackman and Richard Dreyfuss. They were two of the biggest stars at the time. And I was an extra in Rocky Four. That was kind of my 15 minutes of fame. Yeah, that always gets a reaction that I like. The big, the big fight at the end, Mitzi, was shot at the Agrodome in Vancouver. So I was in the crowd. You don't see me in the movie, but I was there for one day. I got to see Sylvester Stallone and Ivan Drago, Dolph Lundgren, duke it out of the ring. But unfortunately, I don't mean to gross you or any of your listeners out, but I developed psoriasis. Do you know what that is? Psoriasis is a very common skin condition where some of our bodies generate much more dry skin than what would be considered normal. And so I gave up on my dream of acting because my skin just got to be so bad that I was starting to feel less like a human being and more like a reptile. Now, every so often over the last 35 years, I've made these sort of half-hearted, sporadic attempts at writing. But I fell into a routine in life, which some of us do. I've just
Yeah.
been sort of living like a couch potato. And I used to be very overweight. I used to weigh 235 pounds. And every so often I would have a moment of clarity. It's like, wait a second, I know I can do better. Now I would read self-help books, and I would listen to self-help tapes, Anthony Robbins, Awaken the Giant Within, and Deepak Chopra. And I don't feel like doing any of that stuff was a waste of time. I was in therapy for a year and I found that to be beneficial. But I just couldn't get past the ready, set stage. I was just constantly going in circles. And then my life
Yeah.
changed in 2019. And that's why you're interviewing me right now. What happened was I had kind of reached a saturation point where I was finally fed up with the way I was living my life. I always knew I could do better. And so I took a leap of faith. I've always been an agnostic, tried to keep an open mind about everything. But I discovered about myself, excuse me, that I'm the kind of person who tries a little bit harder if I have it in my mind's eye that someone who loves me and accepts me unconditionally for who I am as an individual is rooting for me to make at least some effort towards self-manifestation versus just lying on the couch every night after work and watching DVDs and binge watching, all these TV shows and all these movies. So I took a leap
Yeah.
of faith and I said, God, our Heavenly Father, I've been hearing about you all my life. I don't know if you're real, but I'm going to make this choice that you are real. And so once I did that, I began to feel love. Like real, like I know I've had people in my life who loved me, but not this kind of pure, holy, unconditional love that I feel from God. And I think many of
Yeah.
us who have faith. And so I've discovered, Mitzi, that this feeling of love is a motivator. So that was the beginning of my true life's journey of becoming a self-published author. Now, just to backpedal a little bit, in 2005, I wrote a bunch of short stories. I created a character called Lee Hacklin. He's a private investigator, and he's a smoker and a drinker, and he's a ladies' man. He's basically a much cooler version of me, which is something I think a lot of writers do. I think that's what Tom Clancy did when he created Jack Ryan, or Ian Fleming when he created James Bond, or Stan Lee when he created
Yeah.
Spider-Man. It's a wish. It's a wish fulfillment. It's like, well, this is me, but much braver, much more handsome, much more charismatic, and so on. And so I just wrote these short stories for my own amusement at work. I was just working security at this job. It was like the world's easiest job. And then After I reached out to God and asked him to help me, I cobbled these short stories together. Thank goodness I made hard copies of them and I read them. I'd written them many years ago. And I don't know if you do any creative writing, Missy. It's very hard to be objective about your own stuff, right? And at the end of the day, we're all our own worst critics. But I was
Yep.
able to read these stories as if someone else had written them. Like, gosh, I thought if these stories were written by Joe Blow instead of John Leister, I know I would like them. So there's got to be at least one other weirdo in this world who doesn't think that they're total garbage. So they became my first book, The Collected Cases of Lee Hackler, 1970s Private Investigator, Book One. And it was a real uphill struggle for me to get that first book posted. And this is another important life lesson I feel. When we embark on a new adventure in our lives, we have to have it in our mind's eye in advance. This is really important for all your listeners out there. There are going to be hiccups along the way. There are going to be obstacles that are unforeseen, and that it's okay. You go to plan B, you go to plan C, you ask for help. And this is a guy thing, I feel. I don't mean to be sexist or stereotypical, but we men, we're not very keen on asking for help. That's just, we want to do everything by ourselves, DIY, and that's good up to a point. But at some point, if you need information and you need to get it from other people, then you better ask, and you have to demonstrate to people that you're worth helping. So I was going to the library every day after work, and initially I was dealing with Amazon, and Amazon was rejecting my banking information. And this is the hiccup that I had. And so then I'd go to the bank, and they say, no, it's the right information. So I was going in circles, and I was losing my mind. But because I'd taken this leap of faith, because, God, I see my relationship with God as like Big Brother from 1984, Big Brother's watching you, but in a good way, in a loving way, like Yoda in Luke Skywalker's rucksack, whispering in my ear all the time, don't give up. Okay? You're not getting the result that you want. Go to plan B, go to plan C, ask for help, keep digging, keep trying. And then one magical day, Mitzi, I saw on the screen, congratulations, your ebook has been published. I don't know what I did differently or what happened. I know, right? And it was a very unusual feeling for me. Some people people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, they live their whole lives this way. They have a goal, they move towards it, there's hiccups along the way, they achieve the goal, and then they move on to the next goal, right? And then there are people
Yep.
like myself who just don't seem to have that drive and determination. But when I saw on that screen, that window, I thought, so gosh, that's what that feels like. Crossing the finish line, like starting something, and there were hit potholes and speed bumps along the way, and little hiccups. And for once, I didn't fail. For once, I didn't throw in the towel. I actually crossed the finish line. Now, this was in 2019, and now it's 2024, and I have over now. I don't mean to beat my chest about this, okay? But I have about 100 of these books online now. Now, mind you, they're not very long. I mean, some of them are about 20, 25 pages. They're short stories. Essentially, they're glorified short stories. So I've discovered over the last 5 years that this is what I was meant to do with my life. And are not so much discovered, but just embraced it. And my message to the world is it's not too late. I'm 59 now. I'm in the best shape of my life, physically and emotionally, and spiritually, I like to think, at least compared to the way I was living my life before I had God in my life. And here's another thing, I lost 65 pounds because when we begin to love ourselves, and it's not narcissism to love yourself, you absolutely have to love yourself, I feel. And this is just my opinion. And if people disagree with me, that's fine. I'm not out to change other people's opinions. I'm just sharing my story. You have to love yourself. You have to accept who you are, accept what you like. And if you feel like you're lost at sea and you can't decide, what kind of career that you want for yourself, just go with what you like. If you're into pop culture and Star Wars and Marvel and Disney and all this stuff, for goodness sakes, do a podcast like what you're doing. Share yourself with the world, share your ideas and your thoughts. And you meet the most amazing people. You might wind up meeting someone that you spend the rest of your life with, and you might meet people who open doors for you. So that's my story in a very long-winded nutshell.
No, I
That's
really
basically
enjoyed
it.
it. You
Thank you.
you you brought up a lot of very good points, and I'm really glad that you did. You brought up faith. You brought up the reality that you're not like everybody. You didn't have the same perception of sports or just in life.
Right.
Your goals were
We're
differently.
not teasing a
And
pod.
Exactly. And
Right.
that's the thing. A lot of people need to remember that it's okay to be different. It's okay to embrace whatever that you feel as long as it's appropriate for the moment, for the context, and I think more people need to start thinking about that. And I also like the fact that you brought up hiccups because man, do those hiccups really bombard our life. And sometimes it causes us to freeze in the moment instead of just evaluating and rationalizing the
But it's the easiest thing
situation.
to quit, right? It's the easiest thing to throw in the towel. If you believe in the story of the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve and the apple, and Eve ate the apple, and God kicked Adam and Eve out of paradise. If you believe in that story, and personally I don't, but I think it's a parable. I see it as a fable. I think that the moral of that story is paradise sucks. We really don't want paradise. It would be fun for a while. I'm sure Adam and Eve had a good time for a little while frolicking around the Garden of Eden, but eventually they got bored. That's why they ate the apple, because if we had paradise, we'd have no purpose. We need our challenges. We need our hills to climb, because that's what gives our lives purpose. Now, we shouldn't go out of our way to create those challenges, and we will do that if we make bad choices. If I wake up tomorrow morning and the first thing I do is have a six-pack of beer before going to work, right? That's going to add not only to my woes, but to the woes of anybody who cares about me, right?
Yeah,
The more positive choices that we make in our lives, the more that we embrace who we are, accept who we are, love ourselves, accept ourselves, and those feelings go out into the world. And people who say, "Oh, I'm going to live my life the way I want to live my life," and if other people don't like it, that's fine. But if you're living in a state of self-immolation, as I was for so many years, those feelings have a global impact. When we feel good about ourselves, we're actually inspiring other people to feel good about themselves. And that works both ways. And that's how I'm trying to live my life for however many years I'm lucky enough to have left. And again, better late than never. We have to live
exactly.
in the present. We have to live in the here and now. As soon as we start thinking about the past, oh, I should have done this. Oh, I should have done that. Oh, I remember 10 years ago when everything was great. It's disempowering. We as individuals need to have a mindset that empowers us, right, to act versus procrastinate. And again, just have it in your minds, I used to said earlier, there are going to be obstacles. There are going to be hiccups that are unforeseen. And it's okay. That's what makes it interesting. I mean, if you saw a movie where the hero had no challenges, it would be a pretty boring movie, right? It wouldn't, you know
Yeah,
what? You make two movies about a guy who sails around the world, and in one version, it's clear sky, and he goes to a Polynesian island and he marries a beautiful woman. It's a happy ending. But in the other movie, there's a storm and the ship sinks and there's sharks and he winds up on an island that's populated by cannibals and there's a CIA agent and he rescues her and they go off and they destroy a laser weapon that's in Cuba that's pointed at Washington D.C. and then there's aliens. Like that's the movie that's going to make more money, right? That's the movie
exactly.
that's more exciting, and that's our lives. And I have a Facebook group page called Johnny's Way, and I write this very often. And I think I might have gotten this from Joe Rogan. If you think of your life as a movie, right, and
Yeah,
you're the
yeah.
star of the movie. And if you're sitting in a movie theater and if you're watching your life on the screen, would you want to keep watching or would you leave the
Ooh,
theater, right? I think that's an
ooh.
important question to ask ourselves if we're trying to determine if we're in sync with whatever it is that we're trying to achieve with our lives. If you want to stay in the theater, if you want to keep watching, then you're probably on track. But if
Yeah.
you want to get your money back, well, then you better make some changes because the clock is ticking.
I like that. I like that a
Thank
lot.
you.
I don't think I've heard that one yet, but I think that is a great point for people to really think about. Like, do you really want to sit in the movie and watch yourself knowing that all you're doing is just sitting on the couch and not doing anything or not trying, not progressing, not literally doing nothing? That's
And
still a choice. That is still a choice. And our choices, like you said earlier, have consequences. And it's amazing to know that there are so many people out there that are just passing by, allowing their time go by as
yeah,
if
I was
there's
one of those
no
people.
consequences. Yeah, and if there's
I'm not judgmental because I was one of those people. And yeah, exactly right, 100%.
it
Yeah.
is amazing. So I'm curious, since you said you're a sci-fi guy, if you had any superpower, what would be your superpower?
Oh, I love this question. I guess probably the most obvious one. I think it'd be pretty cool to fly. I
Flying.
guess to be able to fly would be pretty nice. Well, what about you? What would be your superpower?
Um, to be honest, I think I'm gonna steal somebody else's that I heard. I'm gonna say healing because I
Okay, that's a
think
good one.
you know what
Okay,
I
I'll
mean?
go with
Because I
that.
think if I'm able to heal somebody even in the slightest way, I think
Hmm,
that's a pretty powerful superpower. And if healing it was no longer an option, I would most definitely be like handling weather. Like I would be Mother Nature. You know what I mean? I would
that's
want that
very
type of
lovely.
power too.
You know, that the power to be able to heal people's emotions. Because I think many of us, and again, I speak from experience, we're stuck in the past. We're
Yeah.
stuck in all our regrets and missed opportunities. I know I dropped out of school. I know I tried this and it was too hard and I quit. I remember when I was a kid and playing sports and I was just so inept at sports and I allowed those feelings to bleed into every other aspect of my life. And something that I learned from cognitive therapy, I had an amazing therapist. He said to me, he said, I played tennis and I've been playing tennis for 5 years and I don't feel like I've made very much progress. And it frustrates me. This is my psychiatrist. And he said, but that doesn't change how I feel about myself as a shrink or as a father or as a husband, right? And so it's important to be able to separate aspects of yourself. Just because you suck at one thing does not mean that you're going to suck at everything. And this is a distortion and it's a trap that some of us fall into. And again, it's disempowering. And when we feel that way, the temptations, you as an American and me as a Canadian, we're living in the so-called first world nations, right? Which is great because we have a tremendous amount of freedom, but we can abuse that freedom, right? So it might be alcohol or drugs, or in my case, it was junk food. I was living like a drug addict for 35 years. I wasn't breaking into people's cars and breaking into people's homes to support my habit, but I was essentially, I put all my eggs in one basket. What am I going to have for dinner tonight? KFC or pizza? How much ice cream can I eat tonight? I can't even look at that stuff now. Well, I mean, that's about sugary stuff too, because I love myself. I mean, I still indulge a little bit. And again, we can enjoy our vices. We can
Yeah.
enjoy our Netflix and our
Yeah.
junk food in moderation,
Exactly.
as long as it's not at the sacrifice of whatever it is that we were meant to do with our lives.
Yeah, it's the
And again, it's all
sacrifice,
about
yeah.
mindset. We have to develop a mindset that works for us. If you're not getting, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, right? You have to change your thinking, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's just like you're not going to get a university degree overnight. You have to do it incrementally, and you're going to slip along the way. You're going to fall off the wagon sometimes, and it's okay. Rocky Balboa said it best, we keep moving forward. I mean, you and I are still alive, and all of your listeners are still alive. So we must be doing something right, right? We need to think about that so that we feel good about ourselves. And again, it's all about feelings. I feel that feelings are so important because, again, when we feel good about ourselves, when we love ourselves, if you can give yourself a thumbs up in the mirror and wink to yourself, then you know that you're on track. But so many people are just walking around looking at their feet, or they're agitated, or they're touchy. Some people are so touchy, right?
Yeah.
You be kind to them and they react negatively. It's
Yeah.
because their half glass water is half empty. Why do people choose crime? Why do some people choose a life of crime? To you and I, it's completely baffling, right? I think they do it because they don't see the beauty of the world. They just see the
Yeah.
darkness. And here's another thing that see. I don't watch the news. I virtually completely shut off the news. It's not that I don't care. I do care about what's going on in the world, but it's beyond my control. I'm a recovering news junkie. I used to listen to all these very conservative podcasts, and it was interesting and it was stimulating, but I was losing my mind because all the
Yeah.
madness and mayhem of the world. I mean, look around. Look at Vancouver. You know, Vancouver is one of the most diverse cities in the world. There's people of all shapes and sizes here. I see peace. I see people living their lives like you and me. The news is never going to report that, right? I mean,
Because it's boring.
If aliens came to Earth and they studied us based on the news, what would they report back to their home planet? They would report back they were all a bunch of murdering savages, right? If they just based humanity on the news, right?
Exactly. I
That's
say
why I
that
don't.
all the time.
Yeah,
I'm a
that's why I don't
sci-fi
watch it,
junkie too, and I
right?
and I say that all the time with these alien movies. Humans are always a problem. over and
Right.
over again. We are destructive, we are manipulative, we kill ourselves, we are our own doom, and it's repetitive in every type of sci-fi movie over. And people don't realize, okay, maybe there's a point to this. You know what I mean? Like maybe we should connect the dots and realize something needs to change. But the only way it's going to change is when we take the initiative. And
Exactly.
it's crazy because too many people believe that somebody else is going to take care of it, and somebody else is going to take care of it. So they don't take care of it and they never hold the responsibility on themselves, pushing it on somebody else, having them accountable. But in reaction and actuality, you are accountable for your actions and your choices for what you do right now at this very moment. And if you
Yes.
choose to ignore it, then that is still has a consequence attached to that. And people
Yeah,
don't
we reap
acknowledge
what we
that.
sow. You're 100% right. Yeah.
Mm,
The more we think about what's within our control, the more empowered we feel, again, to do whatever it is that we want to do with our lives. If you want to get your pilot's license and 10 years pass and you haven't taken so much as a baby, just as an example, and if you haven't taken so much as a baby step towards getting your pilot's license, but that's what you really want, every other aspect of your life could be fantastic. But that little bird, that little nattering bird, that little woodpecker is pecking away at your brain, that undermines your emotional health. And other people pick up on that. Other people, we're very intuitive about other people's feelings, I feel, most of us.
mm,
And I'm sure many people over the years wondered, geez, John always talks about writing. John reads all these books and he's got all these opinions. Why doesn't he do it? Like, what, I'm sure a lot of people thought that about me. Well, here I am in 2024 and I'm doing it. And all I needed to do essentially was ask for help. So I have it in my mind's eye that God is watching me all of the time. And he's like, well, John, did you reach out to another podcaster today? Did you do some writing? Did you do your push-ups? Did you do unto others? Are you treating other people the way that you like to be treated? Again, this is my mindset that has aligned me with, which is what I feel is the best possible version of myself. And again, we have to I'm always learning. We're all works in progress at the end of the day. We're
yeah.
all works in progress, right? But again, I'm running out of things to say.
No, it's okay. It's okay. This has been such a great conversation, John. Really, I didn't know where this conversation was going to go, but man, it was such a delight to be able to pick your
Thank you.
brain.
Likewise.
Yeah, have you share your thoughts and your opinions on life, about writing, about creativity, about just growth, maturity. I mean, goodness, if there was a topic for each little section that we talked that you just went over, goodness, it would be so many hashtags.
You know,
But
my life is so much more fun now. I thought I was having fun when I was a couch potato, watching all these DVDs and a little bit of Netflix and pounding down all this junk food. I mean, I knew I could do, I knew my intellectual, quote unquote, intellectual part of my brain was like, what are you doing? This is really stupid what you're doing. But because I was having fun doing it, this is so much more fun. Reaching out to nice people like yourself, manifesting, creating, I feel like I feel like the way I was living my life before, I was essentially sitting on the sidelines. I was
yeah.
in the office, but now I feel like I'm on the playing field. I'm a player. And the difference between the two is the difference between existing and living.
No, I like that very much. Ugh, well, thank you so much, John, once again for being on my show and sharing your time. That's
Thank
all
you,
that we
Mitzi.
have for you guys today. But as always keep thinking, y'all. Bye.
Bye.